Hey guys, tonight we settle into the soft shadows and explore a very old story, one about a gift that wasn't quite a gift, and a little bit of trouble that taught us a lot about feeling things deeply. You close your eyes, and you can almost feel the cool, fine dust of ancient Greece under your bare feet. You are standing on a quiet hill, the sunset light turning the olive trees a deep, dusty silver. The air is still and warm, holding the quiet promise of a long, undisturbed night. You hear only the distant, slow chime of a bell and the almost silent stirring of the wind high up in the leaves. It is a slow, easy place, a world before urgency, a time when the gods were much closer than they are now. Closer, and perhaps a little more mischievous than your current landlord. You probably believe that Pandora, the first woman in this long-ago tale, was just a curious troublemaker who couldn't keep her hands off things. But the story is much softer, much quieter than that, and it speaks to the small, insistent pull we all feel toward the things we don't understand, the subtle, quiet itch of the unknown. Imagine yourself standing there, breathing in the scent of dry earth and pine. The world feels new, uncluttered, almost too simple. You are the only person here, surrounded by stillness. There is no background noise, no screen glare, nothing rushing at you. Just the soft, enormous quiet of the very first days. This stillness, this quiet perfection, can feel a little unnerving, can't it? It's too calm, and you feel a very small, very subtle desire for something to happen, something to break the absolute, unwavering peace, before you get too comfortable and possibly fall asleep halfway through. Tap like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this odd mix of boredom and history. It keeps the channel alive and the stories just sleepy enough to help you drift off again next time. You can also tell me where you are listening from and what local time it is. Post it down in the comments if you are feeling a little wakeful. Now, dim the lights, let the world outside grow quiet, and turn on a fan if you like that soft, steady hum in the background. Let your shoulders loosen and your breathing slow. This is your time to drift. No rush, no deadlines, no noise. Just you, a little warmth in the air, and the faint whisper of history waiting to unfold. So, settle in, and let's ease gently into tonight's journey together. You turn around slowly in the quiet light, and you notice the object. It is sitting on a low, smooth stone a little way from you. It is not a box, as many have wrongly remembered over the long ages. The Greeks used the word pithos, which means a very large earthenware storage jar, the kind they would use to keep grain, wine, or perhaps a secret that needed a very thick, heavy vessel to contain it. The word pithos carries a weight, a quiet, deep importance that a simple box never could. You approach the jar. The clay is a deep, warm terracotta color, sun-baked and smooth to your touch. It is much larger than you expected, maybe reaching your hip, heavy and utterly still on the stone. You run your hand over its curved, strong side, feeling the faint, gentle grit of the ancient earth in its texture. There is a deep, unsettling silence coming from the jar, a silence that seems to absorb all the sounds around it. You lean closer, listening, but the jar only offers back a profound, velvet quiet. The gods, of course, had their reasons for giving you this jar. You were fashioned by the smith, god Hephaestus, a quiet work of divine artistry, molded from the same soft earth you stand on now. You were given gifts, gifts of grace, of gentle persuasion, of quiet weaving, and a subtle, soft mind. These were the gifts to make the world interesting, to introduce the lovely, complex tension of human being into the flawless, simple geometry of the early world. And then came the last gift, the one that sits before you now, the one that changes everything. You lift the jar. It is heavier than you thought, the weight of it settling deep in your arms and shoulders. It is the weight of all possible futures, the weight of the if only, and the what if that had not existed before you. The lid is made of the same heavy, smooth clay, resting perfectly on the lip. It is not sealed or locked. It is simply placed there, held down only by its own considerable weight and the simple understanding that it should remain closed. It is the quietest, most subtle form of divine prohibition. You carry the jar away from the stone, walking slowly under the silent, distant gaze of the unseen gods. You feel the presence of the unknown contents vibrating faintly inside the heavy clay walls. It is not a loud sound, not a rattle, but a kind of internal pressure, a quiet, insistent drumming that only you can perceive. It is the pressure of potential energy, the stored up force of everything that has yet to go wrong, or perhaps everything that has yet to simply be. The subtle tension in your hands is a reflection of a vast, sweeping historical fact. Long before the written word, the earliest civilizations often used these large, burial-like jars, the pithoi, for a much darker purpose than just storing grain. They were sometimes used as coffins, giving the shape of the jar a profound connection to endings and beginnings, to containing the finality of existence. This deep resonance with both life, grain, and death, burial, makes the jar in your hands a perfect symbol for the human condition itself. The quiet space where all things begin and all things end. You set the jar down gently on the soft ground beneath an olive tree, watching the dappled moonlight filter through the leaves onto the warm clay. You sit next to it, breathing in the scent of night, blooming jasmine that drifts in on the softest current of air. The air is still perfect, but the perfection now feels incomplete. You realize that before the jar arrived, you were merely existing. Now, with the heavy, quiet mystery beside you, you are anticipating. Anticipation is a quiet, subtle form of anxiety, isn't it? It is the mind gently running ahead of the body, creating possible scenarios. Will the jar hold treasure? Will it hold something frightening? The jar itself does nothing. It merely is. Yet, simply by being and being closed, it creates in you a vast, internal landscape of subtle unease. This gentle, low-level worry is the first gift of the jar. The feeling that something could happen, and that you are the only one who knows the quiet. Easy solution is simply to leave it closed. You notice a single tiny, almost invisible crack running down the side of the clay vessel, a hairline fracture near the bottom. It is a quirky, fringed tidbit that speaks volumes. This small flaw suggests that the jar, like all created things, is imperfect. It was not meant to hold forever, only to hold for a while. The divine design was always slightly flawed, allowing for the gentle possibility of release, of rupture, of a subtle, quiet unfolding of destiny. This tiny line of imperfection is what draws your eye again and again. It is a silent, irresistible invitation. You trace the crack with the pad of your thumb, feeling the faint, gentle roughness, the desire to know, the subtle curiosity given to you by the gods. Some call it a gentle wisdom, others a fatal flaw. Now begins to whisper softly in your ear. It doesn't scream or demand, it merely suggests. In the softest possible tone, just look, just a peek. No one is watching. It is the most seductive voice in the universe, the voice of quiet, harmless inquiry. You wonder what the gods were thinking. Was this a test of obedience? A quiet lesson in self-control? Or was it an elegant, subtle gift meant to awaken the world from its pleasant, unthinking slumber? Historians still argue whether the jar was meant to be opened at all, or if its very existence was the point. A static object that created dynamic, uneasy feeling in the first person to encounter it. Some say the intention was cruel. Others suggest it was a necessary cruelty, a gentle way to introduce the concept of complexity to a world that was too simple to truly appreciate its own quiet beauty. You look up at the soft, enormous dome of the night sky. If you think the universe is orderly now, imagine how perfectly, terrifyingly ordered it must have seemed then. There were no confusing moral shades of gray, only the perfect, quiet arrangement of the divine plan. The jar, heavy and silent next to you, represents the very first deviation from that plan, the beginning of the human ability to choose the unexpected path. You reach out slowly, your fingers hovering above the heavy, smooth lip of the lid. The clay feels cool now, absorbing the night air. The simple act of almost touching the lid brings a rush of very gentle, low-level adrenaline, a soft, pleasant tingle in your chest. This is what anxiety feels like in its most basic, gentle forms, a pleasant flutter of uncertainty, a quiet energy waiting for an outlet. It's the feeling you get right before the plane takes off, or just before you turn the corner to a new street. It is not pain, it is just tension. You pull your hand back, sighing softly. You decide to wait, to let the night deepen. The jar is a promise, a quiet guarantee that tomorrow will not be the same as today. You lie back on the cool, soft earth, looking at the silent stars. You remember that long ago, ancient Egyptian women, in their quest for eternal smoothness, would actually use crocodile dung mixed with honey as a primitive form of sunscreen. A simple, silly thought, a necessary distraction to keep your mind from the heavy, compelling quiet of the clay jar just inches away. If you can focus on something as absurd as crocodile dung sunscreen, you can surely ignore a simple jar, right? But the jar refuses to be ignored. It doesn't move, it doesn't speak, but it pulses with a silent, internal demand for recognition. You feel a gentle warmth radiating from the clay, a warmth that is not from the day's sun, but from the restless, contained energy inside. It is the warmth of all the small, subtle troubles of the world, quietly stewing, waiting for their moment of soft, easy flight. You roll onto your side, looking directly at the lid. It is perfectly round, perfectly centered. The simple design implies perfection, yet you know, deep down, that perfect things rarely contain other perfect things. Usually, they contain a surprise, a subtle twist in the quiet story. The gods, you suspect, were never interested in perfection, only in experience. They wanted the world to feel things, and the jar is the gentle, heavy mechanism for that feeling. You remember the feeling of the weight when you first lifted it. It was a physical manifestation of the knowledge you were now carrying that the world was incomplete without the things inside. And the moment you acknowledged that knowledge, the moment you felt the jar's weight, the test was already over, the conclusion already assured. Curiosity is not a switch you can flip off. It is the soft, subtle hum that underlies all human thought. It is the engine of quiet discovery. The hours pass with the slow, gentle movement of the night. You close your eyes again. The presence of the jar is a subtle, constant pressure, like a low note held in a piece of sleepy music. It's the awareness of a task left undone, a thought left unsaid, a corner left unexplored. It's not urgent, but it is persistent. This quiet, persistent feeling is the gentle foundation of all human worry, the constant, low-level hum of uncertainty about what comes next. You imagine the subtle sound of the contents. Not a sound, really, but a pressure against the ceramic. You picture tiny, ephemeral shapes, like dust motes floating in a quiet ray of sunlight. But these motes are not light. They are heavy, made of subtle discomfort and quiet, low-frequency distress. They are the beginnings of sadness, the first whispers of fatigue, the small, insistent feeling of disappointment when something doesn't quite work out. They are not grand tragedies. They are the quiet, daily grind of minor worries. You reach out again, this time placing your hand squarely on the lid. The fit is so perfect, the clay so smooth. You realize that opening the jar will be a very slow, quiet action, a deliberate movement of the hands that cannot be undone. It won't be a sudden, dramatic wrenching, but a careful, slow tilt. The stillness of the night encourages this slowness, this contemplation. The jar is waiting. The world is waiting. And you are here, the keeper of the quiet mystery, the one who holds the power to introduce the soft complexity of trouble into the smooth, simple canvas of creation. The feeling is less about wanting to be disobedient and more about wanting the story to simply continue. The greatest enemy of a good story is perfect, unchanging peace. And the jar is the quiet, heavy key to motion, to feeling, to the slow, unfolding drama of being truly human. You trace the rim one last time, before resting your head back on the earth. You know that when the sun rises, the quiet waiting will be over. The tension will be too great, the curiosity too soft and compelling to ignore for another day. The weight of the world's potential sorrow is in your hands, and you are ready to gently, quietly lighten your load by simply sharing it with the world. You drift in the soft moonlight, the heavy jar a silent, constant companion to your rest, its warmth slowly spreading through the night air. The soft light of the earliest dawn touches the edges of the horizon, and you are still lying on the cool earth beside the jar. The air is damp now, carrying the faint, earthy scent of dew and the memory of the night's stillness. The quiet waiting is heavy, heavier than the jar itself. You feel the subtle shift in the atmosphere as the world begins its slow, measured awakening. The jar remains absolutely still, a dark shape against the softening gray light, demanding nothing but your quiet attention. You sit up slowly, your body stiff from the cool ground. You rub your arms, feeling the fine, gentle layer of moisture on your skin. The stillness of this place, this first morning, seems to intensify the subtle internal tension you feel. It is the tension of being perfectly still while knowing that vast, unseen forces are contained just a few inches from your hands. You pick up the jar, feeling its familiar, deep weight settle into your grip. The clay feels slightly colder now, a sign that the energy inside is contained, cool, and perhaps growing denser with the approach of light. You begin to walk slowly, deliberately, carrying the jar across the quiet, expansive landscape. Your steps are silent on the damp earth. You are walking toward no particular destination, just moving under the watchful, unblinking eye of the newly dawning sky. This slow procession, this gentle movement with the heavy, unyielding container, is the essence of the hesitation before action. It is the long, soft pause where you recognize the full gravity of the choice you are about to make. As you trudge softly, feeling the weight shift with each quiet step, you are walking through a world that is still perfectly innocent. There are no thorns, no sharp edges, no hidden fears in the landscape. Everything is smooth, easy, and predictable. And yet, the jar makes the world feel complicated simply by existing. You are carrying the very first potential for discomfort, the seed of every small worry and every subtle, gnawing doubt that future generations will come to know. It is a massive burden, yet it feels quiet, almost manageable, because it is still contained. You remember the feeling of that tiny crack on the side of the jar from last night. That flaw, that almost invisible imperfection in the craftsmanship, now seems like a gentle, subtle nod from the gods, a quiet suggestion that the contents were meant to leak out eventually anyway. No container built by hands, even divine hands, can hold absolute, total reality forever. Everything, even quiet suffering, must eventually find its soft, slow way out. Your journey takes you past a slow, gentle stream. You stop at the bank, looking at your reflection in the smooth, unmoving water. The light is growing stronger, showing the subtle worry in your eyes. Not panic, just a soft, low-level anxiety about the unknown. This kind of anxiety is not a monster, It is merely a quiet companion. The gentle feeling that you should perhaps be paying more attention. That the soft silence might be hiding something. It is the very first form of human restlessness. You set the jar down very gently by the stream. The reflection of the heavy vessel in the water is strangely distorted, making the jar look deeper, more immense than it really is. This distortion is how the mind often treats contained worries. They look enormous and terrifying in the fluid mirror of your imagination, even if they are just a modest collection of small, quiet troubles in reality. You sit back, watching the quiet movement of the water. You recall a curious historical detail from a time much later than this: the peculiar anxiety around sanitation in ancient Rome. It is a mainstream historical fact that despite their genius for aqueducts and public works, the Romans often threw raw sewage out of windows directly onto the street below, a practice that caused widespread low-level discomfort and disease. This quiet, persistent fouling of the environment was a constant source of low-level, avoidable distress. If you think about it, the jar in your hands is a far more elegant, contained version of that same quiet discomfort. Only this time, it's spiritual, not sanitary. You notice a small, dull gray stone resting near the water's edge. You pick it up, turning it over in your fingers. It is unremarkable, cool, and smooth. This small object reminds you of a quirky, fringe tidbit about ancient Greek philosophy. The Stoics, later on, would actually practice visualizing the worst possible outcome for their day: losing their fortunes, facing disgrace, etc., not as a form of self-torture, but as a quiet, gentle immunization against the shock of sudden bad luck. By practicing a mild, intellectual anxiety, they hoped to quiet the loud, sudden panic of real catastrophe. They were, in a way, mentally opening their own pithos every morning, just to let the subtle fear out gently. You close your hand around the cool stone. The moment of decision is approaching, and you feel the soft, steady pressure of inevitability. You were created with a gentle curiosity, a beautiful, compelling need to understand the quiet workings of the world. To leave the jar closed forever would be to deny the essence of your own being. To live in a perpetual state of perfect, unthinking simplicity. The perfection of the world feels hollow now, like a beautiful, empty echo. You reach out for the jar again, pulling it toward you. Historians still argue whether the curiosity was a curse placed upon you by Zeus, or if it was merely the natural, quiet engine of human progress, given a more dramatic framework by the mythmakers. Was it a temptation or an essential tool? As you feel the heavy ceramic pressing against your chest, you realize it doesn't matter what the gods intended. The jar is here, and you have the gentle, quiet agency to open it. That is the only fact that truly exists now. The light is fully golden now, bathing the hills in a soft, quiet warmth. You sit cross-legged, the jar resting on the ground directly in front of you. You run your hand over the smooth, heavy lid. The moment is slow, unhurried. There is no urgency in your movements, only a deep, quiet resolve. You are not rushing into chaos. You are gently easing into complexity. You remember that feeling from last night. The low-level energy inside the jar, the subtle, quiet hum. It is the sound of all future worries, not shouting, but merely whispering their names: disappointment, fatigue, low-grade fear, subtle irritation, confusion. These are the small things, the gentle, quiet anxieties that cling to the edges of every day. They are not the great plagues and wars. Those came much later, carried by human hands. These are the soft, subtle internal states that make life complex and ultimately meaningful. You imagine a world where these things remain inside. It would be a world of uninterrupted, beautiful, but ultimately shallow contentment. No disappointment means no drive to try harder. No fatigue means no appreciation for rest. No gentle fear means no understanding of safety. The jar holds the very texture of human depth. To release them is to give humanity a vocabulary for feeling, a gentle, subtle spectrum of emotional tone. You breathe deeply, a slow, gentle intake of the crisp morning air. You notice the small sounds now, the quiet rush of the stream, the distant, faint drone of a bee beginning its work. These small sounds are comforting, grounding. They remind you that the world outside the jar is still orderly, still gentle. The trouble is contained, but it is waiting, a quiet, heavy secret between you and the soft morning light. You stretch out your hand. The clay lid is cool beneath your fingers. This slow, gentle approach, this soft stretching of the moment, is necessary. The opening cannot be sudden. If you rip the lid off, the shock of the sudden rush of contained anxiety might overwhelm you. It must be a gentle release, a soft invitation. Like turning a large, heavy door on well-oiled hinges, the motion must be slow and deliberate, controlled by your quiet will. You apply a very subtle pressure, just enough to break the perfect seal of dust that has settled between the lid and the lip of the jar. You hear no sound, but you feel a faint, almost imperceptible give in the clay. It is the softest moment of commitment, the quiet point of no return. The jar does not resist. It merely yields gently and inevitably to the soft pressure of your intent. You use both hands now, cupping the heavy lid, and you begin the slow, gradual lift. It is like opening the door to a very dark, quiet room where you know something is waiting, but you cannot quite see what. You lift the lid only an inch, and then you stop, holding it perfectly still, suspended just above the rim. Through the tiny gap, you expect a rush of cold air, a burst of sound, a dramatic explosion. Instead, there is only a slow, quiet, almost velvety exhalation of air, a gentle sigh from the depths of the pithos. It is the breath of all future human worry, and it is strangely soft, almost calming in its lack of violence. You lean closer, your eye level with the small, quiet gap. You cannot see inside, only a profound, soft darkness. But you can feel the air that is now drifting out. It is not smoke or fire or a screeching entity. It is a slow, gentle mist, a cool, quiet vapor that has the weight of an old memory. It smells faintly of dry leaves and quiet, low-grade fatigue. The kind of scent that tells you it's time to rest even though the day has only just begun. This small, slow release is the gentle, quiet beginning of anxiety as we know it. It is not the sudden, paralyzing fear of a predator. It is the soft, pervasive feeling that you might have forgotten something important, or that the light is perhaps a little too dim. It is the subtle, slow erosion of perfect peace. You hold the lid steady for a long, quiet moment. You could still put it back down, close the gap, and restore the moment to its previous, uncomplicated state. But the gentle mist, the quiet, almost hypnotic flow of the contents, tells you that the story has already moved forward. The hesitation is over. You have introduced the concept of trouble into the smooth flow of time, and now you must see what gentle complexities the rest of the jar intends to release. The heavy, unyielding ceramic of the pithos feels warm again now, as if the escaping contents are carrying away the coldness of containment. You realize that keeping all the worries bottled up was perhaps the greatest, most unnatural tension of all. The world was holding its breath, and now, quietly, gently, it is beginning to exhale. You decide to continue the slow, measured opening. You lift the lid just a little more, allowing the gap to widen to a gentle crescent shape. The light of the morning sun still falls softly on the scene, unaware of the subtle, quiet change taking place. The world outside is still perfect, but the air immediately surrounding you is beginning to thicken, to take on a subtle, almost invisible texture woven from the softest threads of human distress. The quiet anxiety is not an attack. It is simply a very slow, very gentle alteration of the atmosphere around you, a subtle shift from simplicity to quiet, complicated awareness. You watch the flow, mesmerized by its silent, unhurried nature. It is not a sudden storm of woe, but a gentle, steady trickle of low, level discomfort, filling the space around you with the first quiet, insistent hints of human struggle. This is the moment where the easy peace of perfection gives way to the enduring, complex dignity of a life lived with quiet, gentle awareness. You continue the slow, gentle movement, easing the heavy lid away from the jar's lip. The action is unhurried, almost meditative, like watching the slow spread of soft light across a quiet floor. You feel the weight of the lid in your hands, but the resistance is gone. The jar seems to be cooperating, quietly ready to share its contents with the still, perfect world. You slide the lid to the side until the opening is wide enough to let the morning light fall deep into the earthen vessel, revealing the profound, absolute darkness at the bottom. As the opening widens, the quiet exhalation from the jar becomes a gentle, visible flow. It is not smoke or vapor, but a soft, shimmering stream of something that looks like heat haze rising from warm pavement on a summer day. Only this haze is cool and carries with it a subtle, low-frequency resonance. It is the texture of quiet distress, the visible form of all future human worry, now drifting softly into the pristine air. You watch the soft stream rise and then spread out gently, moving low over the dewy grass. This is the moment the subtle troubles of the world are released. They are not roaring monsters or sudden disasters. They are the quiet, everyday anxieties that will eventually weave themselves into the fabric of human thought. You identify them, not by sight, but by a very gentle, subtle shift in how your own body feels. The first thing you feel is a very quiet, low-level fatigue. It settles over you like a thin, soft blanket, making your arms feel just a little heavier, your mind just a little less sharp than it was moments ago. This is not the exhaustion of hard labor, but the simple, pervasive fatigue of having to think about things, of realizing that energy is a finite resource, something you must manage carefully. Before the jar was opened, energy was limitless. Now, you feel the subtle, quiet need for rest, the gentle awareness of your own limit. This is the first ripple of human fragility released into the world. Next, you feel a gentle wave of disappointment. It's not the sharp sting of betrayal, but a soft, low, grade letdown. The quiet realization that not every lovely idea will come to perfect fruition. You had imagined the dawn to be more glorious, the water to taste sweeter, the earth to feel softer. And while the morning is beautiful, the gentle air that has emerged from the jar carries a subtle, if only quality, a quiet awareness of things that could have been just a little bit better. This feeling is not painful. It is just a quiet, grounding reminder that life is a subtle mix of what is and what isn't. The flow from the jar continues, a smooth, quiet, unhurried release. You realize that you are watching the birth of human complexity. Without this subtle layer of trouble, there could be no true appreciation. Without the soft, gentle weight of disappointment, the moments of joy would feel flat and unearned. The jar is giving the world its texture, its depth, its quiet, subtle shading. You feel a brief, very mild pang of doubt. It is a quiet question that flits through your mind. Did I do the right thing? It does not demand an answer, but simply sits there, a gentle, subtle challenge to your quiet confidence. This soft doubt is the necessary counterbalance to certainty, the gentle pressure that forces the mind to examine its assumptions, to double-check the heavy lid is actually resting securely on the rim before you walk away. You pick up the heavy lid and place it carefully beside the jar on the damp grass. The jar is now fully open, its dark interior yawning gently at the morning light. The quiet flow continues, a slow, steady stream of these ethereal, low-frequency troubles filling the immediate space. They are settling softly into the air, into the water, into the very earth around you. They are not rushing away, but slowly, gently integrating themselves into the environment. You recall that vast, sweeping historical fact from the first section about how the ancient Greeks used the pithos both for storing grain, life, and for burying the dead, else endings. Now, seeing the slow, quiet release of the contents, you understand the jar's symbolic weight. It holds both the means of survival and the subtle anxieties about the fragility of that survival. It is the vessel of life's total experience, gently releasing the full spectrum of being. A soft, subtle feeling of mild irritation begins to prickle at the edge of your perception. It's the feeling you get when a pebble presses uncomfortably into the sole of your foot, or when a branch lightly brushes your cheek just as you are about to rest. It is a quiet, low, level annoyance at minor, unavoidable frictions. It doesn't cause anger, but it introduces the quiet concept that sometimes things just don't fit perfectly, that the world can be slightly, gently uncooperative. You realize that the term avils, often used to describe the contents, is far too loud, too dramatic. These are not evils, they are just low-frequency discomforts. They are the subtle shifts in mood, the minor hiccups in concentration, the quiet internal battles that make up the vast majority of human emotional experience. They are the things that keep you slightly off balance, subtly forcing you to engage with the world rather than merely existing in it. You gently move your hand through the rising, shimmering haze. It feels cool, like passing your hand through a light layer of morning fog. It is completely harmless, yet it carries the distinct, soft feeling of worry. It is the pure, raw essence of anxiety, not panic, but quiet, pervasive apprehension. You remember the quirky, fringe tidbit about the Stoics deliberately visualizing bad luck to immunize themselves. You are doing the reverse. You are releasing the raw essence of low-grade emotional friction into the world. But the effect is the same. You are gently preparing the ground for resilience. The world will now learn to bend, to adapt, to quietly move around the inevitable small disappointments. Historians still argue whether the number of things contained in the jar was finite or infinite. Looking at the smooth, quiet flow, it seems less like a countable list and more like an elemental substance, a kind of subtle, emotional mist that will simply continue to flow until the deep darkness inside the jar is finally exhausted. It is the idea of trouble, not the specific instances, that is being released now. You watch the gentle mist drift toward the slow, moving stream. When it touches the water, the surface of the stream does not ripple or boil. Instead, the reflection of the sky above seems to subtly dim, losing some of its sharp, cheerful brightness. The world is becoming nuanced, gently shaded with the low, key gray of reality. You look around the quiet landscape. The olive trees still stand tall, their silver leaves shimmering in the increasing light. The hills are still green and calm. The perfection of the world has not been shattered. It has merely been quieted, subdued by the subtle recognition of its own quiet limitations. The troubles are not destroying beauty. They are merely giving it a soft, gentle context. This slow, controlled release is a subtle lesson in managing anxiety itself. When anxiety is tightly contained, it builds pressure until it feels explosive and overwhelming. But when it is allowed to flow out slowly, gently, in a measured, quiet way, it dissipates softly, becoming just another texture in the atmosphere, manageable and even understandable. You, the opener of the jar, are the first to experience this subtle, quiet mastery over the emotional flow. You lean back, feeling the cool, slightly rough earth beneath your hands. The fatigue released from the jar now makes your rest feel earned, deliberate. The faint doubt makes the mornings quiet, beauty feel more precious, less guaranteed. This gentle tension is the first true sign of what it means to be alive and aware in a complex world. You think of that silly, simple distraction from the first section, the crocodile dung sunscreen of the Egyptians. Even that absurd practice was born of a low-level anxiety, the fear of a simple sunburn, the quiet worry about appearances, the desire to look good, the fear of minor discomfort. These are the subtle threads now being woven into the human mind. By the gentle mist rising from the jar, you reach out and touch the clay one last time. It feels cooler, lighter, as if the physical act of containing the emotional burden made it heavier than the actual contents. The moment of release is surprisingly undramatic, a quiet, gentle easing of pressure. The grand tragedy you might have imagined is instead a subtle, slow transition, a quiet, soft turning of the page to the next chapter of existence. You stand up, stretching slowly, feeling the subtle new fatigue settling gently into your muscles. You look down at the open jar. The flow of the mist is beginning to slow, thinning out now. The deep darkness inside is becoming less potent, less absolute. Most of the low-frequency discomforts, the disappointment, the doubt, the quiet irritation, have already moved out, dispersing gently on the morning air. You realize that soon the flow will stop. The jar will be mostly empty, and the world will have been subtly, irrevocably changed. The great, quiet wave of all minor human worries will have passed, leaving behind a world that is not perfect, but beautifully, quietly real. You wait patiently for the subtle flow to cease entirely, recognizing this moment as the quiet, gentle climax of the story. Not a bang, but a long, soft, deliberate sigh. The rising sun continues its ascent, and the golden light is beginning to feel genuinely warm on your skin. The air is still and silent, holding the gentle, complex fragrance of newly introduced awareness. You are standing in the quiet aftermath of the first great release, feeling the soft, undeniable weight of a world that is now subtly, gently complicated. The slow, velvety stream of subtle discomfort rising from the open jar is now noticeably weaker, a thin, quiet wisp rather than a steady flow. You stand patiently beside the pithos, watching as the very last remnants of the low-frequency troubles escape and drift softly away, mingling with the fresh morning air. The thickest part of the haze has gone, and spreading out across the quiet hills and settling gently into the hidden corners of the land. This cloud of soft worries is not chaotic. It moves with the quiet dignity of a dissipating mist. It is composed entirely of the subtle, invisible things that make life occasionally cumbersome. The soft dread of an impending change, the quiet frustration of a small miscommunication, the gentle sting of minor rejection. These are the burdens that future generations will simply call a bad day. The constant, low-level atmospheric pressure of human existence. You feel the full, quiet weight of the change you have initiated. The air around you no longer possesses that sharp, unblemished clarity it held yesterday. It is now softer, more dense, filled with the faint, invisible particles of shared experience. Every gentle breeze now carries a subtle hint of something being not quite right, a quiet reminder that perfection is no longer the default setting. This is the quiet presence of universal, low-level anxiety settling over the world. You reach down and gently touch the clay rim of the jar. It is cool and smooth. You peer into the depths, but the sun is too high now to see the bottom clearly. It casts a deep, opaque shadow inside. The feeling of vast, terrifying darkness is replaced by a simple, quiet emptiness. Most of the subtle energy is gone, released from its long confinement. You remember that vast, sweeping historical fact that these pithoi were used as ancient coffins. Now, the jar feels like a tomb that has released its spirits, not screaming banshees, but quiet, thoughtful ghosts of low-grade worry, now free to roam the world and engage with human minds. The jar is empty of the bad feelings, and yet the bad feelings are now everywhere, softly present, gently available for everyone to feel. You feel a new sensation, a mild, subtle melancholy. It is a quiet, soft sadness, an appreciation for the beautiful, simple peace that you have just left behind. It is not despair, but a gentle nostalgia for the time before knowledge, before the subtle burden of choice. This melancholy is the quiet cost of awareness, the gentle recognition that to appreciate the good, you must also be capable of feeling the soft lack of it. The feeling of mild irritation, which escaped in the last section, now manifests gently. You notice a small, quiet mosquito buzzing lazily near your ear. Before the jar was opened, you would not have noticed it, or perhaps it wouldn't have been there. Now, the quiet, persistent buzzes introduces a subtle, low-grade annoyance, a feeling that some things in the world are designed simply to bother you in a small, unavoidable way. You wave your hand gently, and the insect drifts off. This small, soft friction is now part of the daily rhythm. You think about that quirky, fringe tidbit about the Stoics and their morning visualization of disaster. Now, everyone in the world, once they arrive, will be born with this built-in, low-level anxiety. They won't need to visualize it. The quiet awareness of potential troubles will simply be part of their operating system. The Stoics were trying to reintroduce what you have just gently released, seeking immunity through mild exposure. You have simply made mild exposure the universal truth. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the gentle, complex atmosphere settle around you. The sun feels warm, but there is now a faint, soft sense of vulnerability accompanying the heat. The awareness that this warmth might one day fade, that the comfortable climate is not guaranteed. It is a quiet, subtle pressure to appreciate the present moment, because it is, by definition, temporary. You rise slowly and begin to walk again, leaving the open jar resting quietly by the stream. You are walking through the newly complicated world, observing the quiet, subtle changes. The grass still feels soft under your feet, but you now instinctively watch where you step, checking for any small, unseen obstacle, the subtle, quiet introduction of caution. You remember the feeling of the heavy jar in your hands. That weight, that contained tension, was actually simpler to manage than this subtle, diffused feeling of widespread worry. When anxiety is contained, you know where it is. When it is released, it is everywhere, a gentle, pervasive part of the atmosphere. This is the quiet shift from a single, overwhelming fear to 1,000 small, manageable worries. You pass an enormous, ancient oak tree, its roots snake across the earth, strong and quiet. You lean against the rough, warm bark, feeling its unyielding strength. It reminds you of a mainstream historical fact that in the Middle Ages, long after this gentle dawn, people suffered from anxieties that were often tied directly to the cycles of the earth. The quiet fear of crop failure, the deep worry over the coming winter. Their fears were physical and immediate. The anxiety you have released is more subtle, more emotional. The quiet fear of not quite measuring up, the soft pressure of expectations. You observe the slow, gentle movement of the leaves overhead, turning silver in the light breeze. The breeze carries a distant, faint echo of the quiet, velvety exhalation from the jar. It is the persistent, soft murmur of low-level, self-generated distress. You realize the greatest gift of the jar is not the troubles themselves, but the ability to feel them, which is also the ability to recognize when they are absent. Historians still argue whether the Greek myth truly reflects a pessimistic view of human life, or if the release of the avils was a necessary, positive step towards self-awareness and moral development. As you stand in the quiet, complex air, you feel that the truth is softer. The world is simply more interesting now, more textured, less of a flat, predictable line. The anxieties are the quiet, subtle shading that gives the picture its depth. You feel a subtle pang of loneliness, a new, quiet awareness of your own singular presence in this unfolding world. Before, you were simply alone. Now, you are aware of your solitude, gently recognizing the lack of another mind to share this quiet experience with. This subtle loneliness is not pain, but the quiet, deep desire for connection, a feeling that will drive the gentle search for community in the coming ages. You start moving again, walking in a slow, easy circle back toward the stream, toward the open jar. The initial surprise of the release has faded, replaced by a quiet, thoughtful acceptance. The world is exactly the same, but your perception of it is subtly, gently changed. Everything is now qualified by the possibility of friction, by the subtle, quiet recognition that things might be difficult. You find yourself walking more slowly, more deliberately, paying closer attention to the feeling of your feet on the ground. This deliberate slowness is a reaction to the released fatigue, a quiet attempt to conserve energy, to acknowledge the subtle limits of the body. You are experiencing the quiet dignity of human moderation. For the first time, you arrive back at the stream. The jar is exactly where you left it, open and empty of its heavy, dark core. You look down at the ground near the jar, and you notice something very small, very subtle, and profoundly quiet. It is a soft, gentle luminescence, a faint, quiet glow that seems to have sunk to the very bottom of the jar and settled there, refusing to be carried away by the soft flow of the troubles. This final presence is not floating. It is resting, heavy and quiet, anchored to the clay base. It is a soft, luminous energy, quiet and still. While the disappointment, the fatigue, the melancholy, and the doubt all rose and drifted softly away, this one thing stayed. It is the last inhabitant of the jar, the only thing that did not wish to leave. You sit down again, leaning in closer to the pithos. The quiet glow is gentle, radiating a soft, steady, internal warmth that contrasts with the cool ceramic. It is a feeling of quiet, persistent possibility, a soft refusal to yield to the subtle cloud of worry that has just passed. The presence is so small, so quiet, so unassuming compared to the vast, velvety rush of the other things. It is easily overlooked, easily missed. If you had slammed the lid down quickly, the jar would have looked empty, and you would have assumed everything was lost, that only trouble remained in the air. But because you acted slowly, gently, with quiet, unhurried attention, you see this final, subtle, steady glow. You reach out your hand slowly, gently, as you did before the opening. You do not touch the glow itself, but hover your hand over the open jar, feeling the slight, subtle warmth rising from the quiet presence at the bottom. This warmth is the first positive feeling that has been present since the jar arrived. Not the simple, unthinking pleasure of perfection, but the quiet, enduring comfort of subtle resilience. You realize this is the thing that the troubles required to make sense. Without the fatigue, this quiet energy would not feel so precious. Without the doubt, this glow would not feel so certain. This subtle presence is the quiet, gentle counterweight to the cloud of worry, the enduring promise that complexity is not chaos, and that low, level anxiety is not the end of the story. You watch the quiet light, preparing for the gentle recognition of its deep, soft meaning. You remain still by the stream, watching the soft, quiet glow at the bottom of the now empty jar. The air is settling down. The subtle haze of low frequency discomfort having fully dispersed into the wider world. The atmosphere feels strangely clear now, almost too clear, a quiet clarity that feels less refreshing and more like a gentle, profound hollow. The jar is empty of its burdens, and the world is suddenly saturated with the quiet awareness of those burdens. You, the initiator of this change, feel the immediate, gentle consequence, a soft sense of exhaustion and a kind of emotional vacancy. The relief of releasing the heavy tension is replaced by the quiet, subtle realization that the troubles, now externalized, have left a void inside you. This sense of hollowness is the core feeling of existential anxiety. Not the worry about what will happen, but the subtle, quiet wonder about what all this means. The world, now textured with minor irritations and gentle disappointments, feels less purposeful than it did in its pristine, simple state. You watch the flow of the stream, and the water no longer seems just beautiful. It seems indifferent. quiet, and eternally moving away from you. The fatigue that escaped earlier now pools gently in your limbs. You feel heavy, your eyelids wanting to droop, a soft, persistent weight settling into your shoulders. This is the quiet toll of deep realization. You have just introduced the concept of struggle to the world. And the first struggle is simply the soft fight against the need to rest. You lean back against the cool earth, embracing the gentle, quiet weariness. You remember that mainstream historical fact about the Romans throwing their sewage into the streets, leading to widespread, low-level anxiety about public health. The feeling you have now is similar, but internal. The quiet exhaustion of navigating a newly messy, subtly unreliable internal landscape. Before, your mind was perfectly clean. Now, it is cluttered with the faint echoes of all the escaping worries, making every thought just a little bit harder to grasp. You stare into the deep, quiet shadow of the jar's interior, past the soft, luminous energy resting at the bottom. You realize that the emptiness you feel is a necessary state. You had to become empty to truly understand what was contained. The anxieties had to leave so that you could observe their texture, their gentle flow, and their subsequent integration into the environment. This quiet, gentle hollowness is the space reserved for future growth. You close your eyes and focus on that single, persistent presence that refused to leave. The soft, glowing ember at the very base of the jar. It is the only thing that did not participate in the escape. This quiet, steady glow is in stark contrast to the velvet dark of the jar and the subtle gray of the newly textured air. It is the single point of quiet, gentle resistance to the overall feeling of subtle dismay. You recall that quirky, fringe tidbit about the Stoics gently inoculating themselves against fear by visualizing the worst. This remaining presence acts as a natural, internal Stoic, a quiet, persistent refusal to be consumed by the mere possibility of suffering. It is a quiet, gentle certainty that even if things are disappointing or difficult, the internal light remains steady and unmoving. You reach out slowly and gently, sliding your fingers into the mouth of the jar. The ceramic is cool and smooth. You don't try to touch the glowing core. You simply feel the quiet energy it projects. It is a gentle warmth that seems to counteract the soft chill of the fatigue settling around you. It is a feeling of soft resilience, the quiet internal voice that suggests, you can rest now, but you will move again. This feeling is not joy. Joy is loud, sudden, and easily broken. This is something quieter, deeper, and far more enduring. It is the soft, gentle understanding that difficulty is temporary, and that quiet effort will always yield a subtle reward. It is the gentle insistence on continuity, a quiet force that stabilizes the world even as the anxieties swirl softly around it. You pull your hand out gently and sit back, thinking about the nature of this quiet, remaining energy. Historians still argue whether the final presence was intentionally left behind by the gods to soften the blow of the released troubles, or if it was merely the fundamental, quiet essence of humanity, that could not be contained, even by the thick clay walls of the pithos. Was it a deliberate gift, or an unavoidable side effect of creation? As you look at the soft glow, you conclude the latter feels truer to the quiet reality. The glow is not a loud, dramatic miracle. It is a quiet, subtle necessity. It is the inherent capacity for human endurance, the gentle, unthinking persistence that prevents the low-level anxieties from overwhelming the entire system. Without this quiet anchor, the subtle doubt and fatigue would indeed become paralyzing despair. You feel a soft rush of understanding. The point of the jar was not the anxieties that escaped, but the light that remained. The anxieties were the necessary stage, setting the subtle shadow that allows the quiet light to be seen clearly. You needed to feel the hollowness, the weariness, and the slight disappointment to truly appreciate this soft, unwavering core. You think of the gentle sarcasm and subtle irony, often used to cope with the small frustrations of modern life. That gentle, quiet humor is a direct descendant of this soft light. The ability to find a quiet, gentle amusement in the face of minor, unavoidable friction. It is the quiet recognition that the pithos has emptied itself of all the serious, high-stakes suffering, leaving behind only the gentle, persistent challenges of daily life. Challenges that can often be met with a soft smile and a deep breath. You reach out and touch the heavy lid resting on the grass. The subtle curve of the clay is familiar. You realize that the job is not yet done. The anxieties are released, and the light is revealed. But now the light itself needs to be managed, to be placed into a gentle context. The quiet power of this final presence must be treated with the same slow, deliberate caution as the jar's heavy burdens. If this final presence, this quiet, steady hope, were to be released entirely, it might flood the world, becoming a different kind of problem-blind, foolish optimism, a refusal to see the gentle, subtle realities of the released worries. If everything is perpetually full of loud, unthinking hope, then the gentle warnings of fatigue and doubt are ignored, leading to recklessness and deeper, more surprising disappointments. The quiet task now is to gently contain the light, not to destroy it, but to give it limits, to make it an internal, quiet strength rather than an external, unthinking force. You pick up the heavy lid, feeling the cool, familiar weight. Your movements are slow, gentle, and deliberate, driven by the quiet understanding of the delicate balance required. You recall that silly, simple distraction from the first section, the crocodile dung sunscreen. It was a funny thought, a gentle way to stave off the low-level anxiety of the unknown. The quiet light in the jar is that same kind of gentle deflection, but far deeper, an enduring, soft capacity for finding the next small, gentle step forward, even when the air feels thick with soft discouragement. You bring the heavy lid over the mouth of the jar, holding it suspended just above the rim. You look down one last time at the gentle, quiet glow inside. It sits absolutely still, radiating its soft warmth, patient and unwavering. It is the quiet promise of the morning after a difficult night, the gentle reminder that the sun will always rise, even if the day is filled with subtle, low-grade worries. You realize that by seeing this final presence, you have gained quiet mastery over both anxiety and hope. You know that the anxieties are real, pervasive, and subtle, but you also know that they are matched by a force that is not louder or stronger, but simply quieter, steadier, and more enduring. The gentle power of this hope is its persistence, its quiet refusal to be a burden, and its decision to simply stay. With a slow, soft movement, you begin to lower the heavy lid, gently restoring the jar to its sealed state. The motion is quiet, deliberate, and feels profoundly final. You are not trapping the light, you are protecting it. You are giving the concept of hope a gentle, soft home, a quiet anchor against the subtle storms of worry that now drift through the world. The heavy clay lid settles back onto the rim of the pithos with a soft, dull sound, a quiet thud that seems to absorb the sound of the world around it. The jar is now closed again, but the closure is fundamentally different from the first time. Then, the jar contained a dense, chaotic mix of unknown troubles and a solitary, unknown hope. Now, the troubles are gone, softly diffused into the world, and the jar contains only the quiet, steady glow securely tucked inside. You press down gently on the lid, ensuring the weight holds it firmly in place. You have not sealed it permanently. You have simply restored the quiet equilibrium. The action is one of gentle preservation. You have contained the single, most important element to ensure it doesn't leak out and become cheap, generalized, or loud. You have made hope a quiet, internal resource rather than an external, unthinking expectation. The world around you is subtly changed. The air still carries the low, soft hum of the diffused anxieties, the quiet awareness of potential fatigue, the gentle sting of disappointment. But now, you carry an internal anchor, the quiet, gentle certainty of the light you have just contained. You realize that hope is not the absence of anxiety, but the quiet awareness of resilience in the presence of anxiety. You feel a soft, subtle transformation. The gentle, weary hollowness that settled over you after the troubles escaped is now gently filled, not with a loud rush of new energy, but with a quiet, persistent sense of endurance. You are still tired, yes, but the fatigue is manageable. It is a gentle reminder to slow down, not a command to stop entirely. You pick up the jar, feeling its familiar shape and weight. It is still heavy, but the quality of the weight has changed. It no longer feels like the pressure of a ticking clock or a confined problem. It feels like the solid, quiet weight of a powerful, enduring truth securely held. You carry the jar away from the stream, walking slowly through the soft, growing warmth of the morning. You remember that vast, sweeping historical fact about the early Greek pithoi being used as burial vessels. Now, the jar seems like a subtle, quiet metaphor for the human heart. It has released the worries, the transient burdens of the world, and now it quietly holds the one thing that truly matters, the gentle, unyielding energy that allows the rest of life to be faced with soft courage. The heart, too, must be cleared of its softest troubles to recognize its quiet, enduring capacity for persistence. As you walk, you notice a small, faint shadow moving across the ground near your feet. You look up and see a gentle, high-flying hawk circling lazily in the bright, quiet sky. This small, graceful movement reminds you of the gentle irony of your task. You released the world's worries so that humanity would have something to solve, something to gently overcome. If the world had remained perfectly peaceful, no one would have ever needed the quiet strength of the hawk's persistent searching, the gentle, focused effort required for survival. You think again of that quirky, fringed tidbit about the Stoics and their morning practice of mild, intellectual dread. They sought to cultivate a quiet, gentle realism. By containing hope, you have done the same. You have made hope realistic. It is no longer a boundless, non-force. It is a quiet, soft glow at the bottom of a heavy vessel, accessible only through gentle, deliberate introspection. It is a quiet truth, not a loud promise. You set the jar down gently in a patch of soft, tall grass. The sunlight catches the smooth clay. You look closely at the tiny hairline crack you noticed in the first section. The crack is still there, but now, instead of feeling like a subtle flaw about to rupture, it feels like a quiet, gentle scar, a sign that the vessel has endured a profound pressure and survived. The crack is the subtle, quiet reminder that even strong things have limits, and that quiet resilience is often born from gentle breakage. You sit down beside the jar. The air is warm and still. You recognize the subtle difference in the texture of the fatigue that settles over you now. It is no longer the empty, discouraging exhaustion that escaped from the jar. It is the quiet, gentle tiredness that comes from a profound, thoughtful exertion. It is a fatigue that invites soft rest, not despair, a quiet need that allows you to truly appreciate the simple comfort of sitting still. Historians still argue whether the light at the bottom of the jar should truly be called Elpis, the Greek word for hope. Some scholars suggest Elpis originally meant anticipation or expectation, which could be either good or bad. As you look at the jar, you realize the quiet power of this ambiguity. The light remaining is the fundamental human capacity for anticipation, the gentle, quiet ability to look forward to the next thing. When trouble was released, the jar emptied itself of bad anticipation, dread, worry. What remains is the gentle, quiet capacity for good anticipation, hope, resilience. It is the engine of forward motion, quietly contained. You remember the feeling of the heavy jar in your arms when you first lifted it. The quiet, subtle tension of the unknown. Now, carrying it feels different. It is the steady weight of personal responsibility, the soft realization that you are the keeper of the quiet balance. The anxieties are out, and they will always be part of the atmosphere. But the capacity for quiet, gentle endurance is safe within the walls of the pithos. You think of the gentle humor and light jokes that now define your narration, the gentle sarcasm blended with a sleepy cadence. This tone, is a direct reflection of the jar's contents. The subtle, quiet recognition of the world's minor flaws. E. The gentle sarcasm, coupled with the enduring, soft presence of hope. The sleepy, calming tune. It is the gentle way we choose to navigate the low-level, diffused anxieties of daily life. You reach out and gently rub the lid of the jar. The clay is comforting, smooth, and warm from the sun. You feel a deep, quiet gratitude for the simple fact that the troubles did not completely overwhelm the light. The flow was dramatic, but the residue of goodness was quieter, yet far more dense and unmoving. It is a lesson in the quiet power of stillness over the loud power of motion. You look out over the landscape, which is subtly, gently complicated by the released concerns. The world now has layers of quiet meaning. There are small stones to trip over, but there are also soft patches of moss to rest on. There is the gentle sting of the mild mosquito, but there is also the cooling presence of the stream. The anxieties are the quiet shadows. The contained hope is the soft, gentle source of light that allows you to navigate them. The soft sun continues its slow climb, and the day stretches out before you. You realize that the myth of the jar is not a warning about curiosity. It is a gentle, quiet instruction manual for living with awareness. It teaches that anxiety is simply the first thing that flows out when you open yourself up to the world, and that if you are patient and gentle, you will always find the quiet, unwavering presence of resilience waiting patiently at the bottom. You rise, feeling the gentle, manageable weight of the jar in your hands once more. You turn and begin to walk, your steps slow and deliberate, carrying the carefully contained quiet light with you. You are moving forward, not in a rush, but with a quiet, thoughtful pace that acknowledges the gentle friction of the newly complicated world. The journey is no longer about finding peace, but about carrying peace within you, a soft, heavy, enduring truth. The feeling of the jar is one of quiet, gentle assurance, the soft knowledge that the best part of the whole equation, the quiet, unwavering strength to continue, is securely held. You continue your slow, deliberate walk, the heavy pithos resting securely in your arms. The weight of the jar is comforting now, a quiet, tangible reminder that the subtle, steady presence is safe within. The day has reached its quiet zenith, the sun high and warm, casting short, soft shadows on the ground. The anxieties released earlier, the subtle fatigue, the gentle disappointment, the soft doubt, are now just part of the background noise of existence, the low, manageable hum of a world that is quietly, gently imperfect. You walk toward a high, quiet rock formation overlooking the gentle landscape. This is where you will place the jar, giving the concept of quiet, contained hope and enduring sanctuary, a place of soft, permanent rest. The ascent is slow and easy, your breathing measured and calm. The fatigue that escaped earlier now serves as a quiet regulator, preventing you from rushing or stumbling. It is a gentle teacher of mindful, slow effort. As you climb, you reflect on the deep connection between the released anxieties and the contained hope. You realize that the anxieties, far from being a curse, are actually the quiet mechanisms that give hope its necessary dimension. Without the possibility of gentle disappointment, hope would just be certainty. Without the subtle sting of doubt, hope would be mere ignorance. The difficulties are the quiet, essential context for the enduring. Soft light at the bottom of the jar. You reach the summit, a smooth, flat expanse of sun-warmed stone. A quiet, gentle breeze whispers across the open space. The view is vast and clear, showing the world stretching out, already subtly complicated, already filled with the quiet, low-level friction of existence. You set the heavy jar down gently in the center of the stone. It sits there, solid and unmoving, a quiet monument to human resilience. You sit down beside it, running your hand over the smooth, closed lid. You know that within the dark clay walls, the gentle, soft glow continues, quiet and persistent, the fundamental core of human endurance. It is not an external savior that rushes out to fix things. It is an internal promise that allows the quiet, gentle work of self-correction to continue. You recall that vast, sweeping historical fact from the earlier sections about the pithoi being used for grain storage, associating the jar with sustenance and survival. Now, the jar holds not physical grain, but spiritual sustenance, the quiet, necessary food for the soul that allows it to face the low-level difficulties released into the world. It is the gentle provision for the journey ahead. You think of that gentle sarcasm and sleepy cadence that define your approach. That tone is possible only because the high stakes, terrifying anxieties have been reduced to manageable, low-level friction. You can afford a quiet, gentle joke about life's minor irritations because you know the quiet core of resilience is securely held. The light inside the jar protects the ability to softly, gently laugh at the mild absurdities of daily struggle. You notice a small, quiet wildflower growing up through a crack in the rock. Its petals are soft, gentle yellow. This small, unthinking persistence reminds you of the quirky, fringe tidbit about the Stoics and their self-inoculation. This wildflower is demonstrating a quiet, natural stoicism, rising despite the hard, unyielding stone. Its gentle, quiet effort mirrors the unwavering glow contained within the jar. You lean close to the clay surface. You know that the anxieties, the gentle fatigue, the subtle melancholy are now out in the world, and they will become the common, quiet challenges of all future generations. They will be the things that make people seek rest, seek companionship, and seek meaning. They are the friction that creates the gentle spark of innovation and connection. The anxieties are the quiet, necessary impetus for humanity to be more than just perfectly contented statues. Historians still argue whether the ending of the myth, where hope is contained, implies a tragedy that humanity cannot fully access hope, or a quiet wisdom that hope must be managed and preserved. Sitting here on the warm, high stone, you realize it is the latter. If hope were fully released, it would be ubiquitous, loud, and unthinking, making people unable to gently recognize true peril. By containing it, You have made hope a quiet, gentle resource, something that requires a deliberate, soft turning inward to access. You remember the quiet relief of releasing the heavy tension in the second section. That tension was the pressure of the unknown. Now, you carry the quiet assurance of the known. The knowledge that no matter what quiet trouble drifts your way, the steady, soft light remains within your grasp. The anxiety is the atmospheric condition. The hope is the internal compass. You look out at the horizon, where the air shimmers softly in the heat. This quiet, gentle closing of the jar is the final lesson in managing the anxieties of the world. You do not fight the low, level troubles that drift in the air. You acknowledge them. You gently breathe them in, and then you quietly and deliberately turn to the internal, soft certainty of the light you have contained. Anxiety is simply the awareness of what might go wrong. Hope is the quiet, gentle refusal to be defined by that awareness. You rise slowly, your body feeling the gentle weight of the responsibility and the quiet comfort of the resolve. You place both hands on the jar's smooth, warm sides one last time. You realize that you have not just changed the world, you have given humanity the quiet, essential tools for navigating its own gentle complexities. The troubles are out, but the quiet, enduring capacity to face them is secure. The gift was not the jar, or even the contents, but the gentle, quiet act of deliberate choice and slow, thoughtful management. The story of the pithos is, at its core, the quiet story of learning how to breathe gently in a subtly complicated world. You turn and begin the slow, measured descent from the high rock. The sun begins its long, quiet, easy slide toward evening. You leave the heavy jar resting, a quiet landmark on the high stone, a silent, enduring presence against the vast, gentle expanse of the world. The world is softer now, quieter, and full of the subtle, gentle knowledge that endurance is not a grand, loud struggle, but a quiet, steady glow, securely anchored deep within. The light is fading now, growing softer, turning the air around you a gentle, deep rose color. You feel the cool evening air beginning to settle onto your skin, a slow, gentle contrast to the sun's warmth. Let the last of these quiet images drift away from your mind. The heavy jar, the slow, moving stream, the subtle, soft glow. The story of anxiety and hope is finished, but the deep, gentle quiet of the night is just beginning. You can feel your own breathing growing shallower, slower, matching the unhurried rhythm of the turning earth. Let your hands unclench, your jaw loosen. The day's subtle tensions, the tiny, low, level worries that escaped from the mythical jar and settled into your own modern atmosphere, they can all begin to softly dissipate now. You are safe, you are still, and you are warm. Remember that the quiet, gentle strength, the soft, unwavering light that makes every small worry manageable, is anchored securely within you, just like that subtle glow at the bottom of the heavy, dark jar. You don't need to chase it. You only need to gently rest and let its quiet assurance fill the soft space you've created. Allow the gentle darkness to wrap around you, soft and thick like a heavy velvet curtain. There is nothing left to hold, nothing left to worry about. Just the slow, steady hum of the world and the quiet, deep certainty of your own peaceful rest. Drift now, gently, easily, with no rush and no thought of tomorrow's subtle needs.